Speaking of economic justice, Donald Trump wrote out today a $500 billion economic justice plan for Black Americans. What I think is important is for people to hear some of your commitments, some of Joe Biden's commitments to Black folks, as people try to say, right? It's the lesser of two evils again. It's the same thing we heard in 2016. How can you just refute that outright? How is this not the lesser of two evils after 200,000 and counting people have died from coronavirus in this country at the hands of this irresponsible president? That's not NAACP's words, those are mine. But I do want to point that out when you talk about what's happened with COVID and the response that you all would have, when you talk about his $500 billion plan and the response that you all would have specifically to Black people, thinking about Alicia's Black to the Future, Black Agenda 2020, thinking about Ice Cube's contract with Black America. Some people are saying, in order to turn out, Senator Harris, I need to know what you're going to do for me. What do I get in return for my vote? How do you respond to that?
That's absolutely right. And people have a right to have their vote earned. Nobody should be saying to anybody, and especially to our folks, that you're supposed to vote for us. That's insulting. We need to earn the vote. And so let's talk about the economic piece. Yeah. And I'm not going to even go into the fact that, by the way, Donald Trump refuses to say Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And Joe Biden has said it. But let's put that aside. In terms of the proactive, right, earning the vote. One of the things that is very important to Joe Biden, and certainly to all of us, is that we understand, when you talk about criminal justice, we've got to reimagine public safety and how we achieve it. And here's what I mean. If you go into any upper middle class neighborhood in America, you will not see the kind of police presence you see in other neighborhoods. But what you will see are well-funded public schools. What you will see are high rates of home ownership. What you will see are small businesses that have access to capital. What you will see are communities that can get health care and afford it, including mental health care. What you will see are people who have jobs that allow them to get through the end of the month without worrying about whether they can feed their children. Healthy communities are safe communities. So it is an outdated way of thinking to think the way you create safe communities is only by putting more police officers on the streets. You want to see safe communities? Invest in the health and well-being of those communities. So I say all that to say that part of what our plan is about $150 billion going into low-interest loans and access to capital with an emphasis on Black-owned and minority-owned businesses. We know that our small businesses are part of the lifeblood of our communities. I was just in Detroit, 7 Mile Road, right? You can go to any city in America and see, usually it's called MLK Way, but you will see all of those businesses and what they are in terms of those leaders being not only business leaders, but civic leaders and community leaders, right? So the infusion of capital and access to capital for our small businesses, knowing, and wherever they are, and I'm joking about MLK Way, you know what I'm saying, right? But that it is, say what?
I said, no, that's real though. Except for where I'm from is gentrified now, but that's real.
Right. But because we have such great entrepreneurial spirit, and it is not the lack of that, it is the lack of access to capital that has held those businesses back. So access to capital. Home ownership. I mean, we know in terms of the history of our country, nobody got 40 acres and a mule. We had a history of redlining. We had a history of, after World War II, when all those mostly men came back from war, the government said, we're going to make this greatest generation a strong middle class. And they gave federal support for people to engage in home ownership. But Black servicemen were pretty much left out. Right. So when you saw a real infusion of capital around home ownership, the Black community didn't get that either. And so we also know that home ownership is one of the greatest sources of wealth of any American family, and also the greatest sources of intergenerational wealth, meaning grandmother passes it down to the children who pass it down to the grandchildren. So that's going to be about a $15,000 tax credit to help first-time homeowners put for down payment or closing costs to buy a home. Title I funding, tripling Title I funding, so that Title I funding is about schools, and in particular, schools that are in low tax-based communities, which are the least funded and tend to have the most of our children. It's about saying that we need to deal with access to health care, one of the biggest impediments to allowing people to not only be healthy, but to thrive. Donald Trump is in court right now, in the Supreme Court with his boy Bill Barr, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act that President Obama, together with Vice President Biden, created, that brought health care to over 20 million people, including saying that you cannot ban people with pre-existing conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, breast cancer. You cannot ban them from access to health care. This is what President Obama did as one of the most significant public policy initiatives since the creation of Social Security. And Donald Trump has been trying to get rid of it since the day he got in office, like he's been trying to get rid of everything that President Obama, together with Vice President Biden, created.
Yeah.
On the other hand, and in the middle of a public health pandemic that, by the way, Black people are 3 times as likely to contract, twice as likely to die from. On the other hand, you have Joe Biden, who is saying we are going to increase access to health care and make sure that we address the fact that we also need to deal with mental health care. You know, the way I think about it, Angela, is the problem with what we've done with healthcare is we act as though the body starts from the neck down, instead of also dealing with the healthcare from the neck up.
Yeah.
And that includes all of the trauma, all of the undiagnosed and untreated trauma that are barriers to people with incredible capacity actually reaching that capacity. So these are some of the things that we will do that are about earning the vote of folks. And that's on top of, as you said, appointing the first Black woman, nominating the first Black woman to the United States Supreme Court. That's on top of what we talked about in terms of criminal justice reform. That's on top of all that we need to do around environmental issues, including, I was just in Flint, what we need to do to invest in healthy water and infrastructure and building up and repairing infrastructure, often which is the most dilapidated in our communities, including our schools and public schools, which are falling apart. So in the middle of the COVID virus, where in the winter months, they can't bring the kids inside because the ventilation is so bad, and we won't let them drink from a water fountain because that's toxic water. We need to improve infrastructure. That's also about jobs. These are the things that we will do. And so I do believe that is a very, very strong foundation of what is necessary, not only to get us to the next phase and to build back better, as we say, but also to acknowledge the inequities that have long existed that need to be addressed.